Rahman Rahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, dear brothers and sisters. Welcome to another episode of Youth Perspectives. Today I'm joined with our three guests. We have Brother Hussain. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
We have Brother
Alaikum.
Milad. It's been how many years, Brother Milad?
Only like two.
Gotcha, buddy. It's been like 3.5, Brother Milad, since Brother Milad has been on this program. But welcome back, Brother Milad.
Good to be back.
Yeah, and then we have Brother Eli. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
How are you doing, Brother Eli?
Good.
Yes. So, inshallah, today we're going to be talking about a very important topic. As we know, Monday is Martin Luther King Day. So, we're going to be talking about the roots of America. We're going to be looking at, taking a review of it. We're going to be looking at Martin Luther King, his life. We're going to be looking at what he stood for. We're going to be looking at his time, what was going on during his time period. And then we're going to connect it today. We're going to connect it to what's going on today. And we're also going to connect it to, the people before us. We're going to connect it to the Ahlul Bayt, the similarities between them, how they both, their movements. Like, for example, Martin Luther King, we know that he was he stood for nonviolence. He didn't want, no matter, what was going on at the time. So, I mean, let's get into it. What was going on at the time? Brother Milad, like, what was going on during the time of Martin Luther King?
At the time, there's the civil rights movement. So obviously, the unfairness and inequality, inequality of African Americans at the time in the U.S. and basically all that. And Martin Luther King Jr. was just one of the main figureheads of the movement.
Was this, segregation? Like, I think segregation, that was like the main thing that like we all, you learn about in school. You see all these things that, even, for example, like the black people and the white people, they would have to drink out of different water fountains, they would have to, obviously different schools. And so we look at Martin Luther King when he wanted to change that. He wanted everybody to be equal. And so what do you guys take from Martin Luther King? What do you take from like his message? What do you think that he stood for?
I feel like Martin Luther King Jr. kind of, even though he was Baptist and not Muslim, I'm very sure that he got his beliefs from Islam, because at the time when he was very inspired by Gandhi, even though he was not Muslim, but he also met Muhammad Ali Jinnah, which was the founder of Pakistan, and he also was very much like Gandhi. He wanted to unite Hindus and Muslims in India, and basically thought of equality among people, even though they differ, like Hindus and Muslims.
Yeah, and like Brother Milad was saying, like what I see is also that the difference, like even between today and then, like Martin Luther King, he didn't just want, African Americans to be seen as, like as equal in terms of like, okay, there's white people, there's brown people, there's, African Americans. He wanted everybody to be equal. He wanted that unity amongst everybody, that it's not just like, we're all, humanity. We're all human. So that's what I see, is that Martin Luther King, he wanted everybody to be treated the same.
Yes, I think Martin Luther King Jr., of course, he did stand for African Americans, of course, but really his general message was for unity. So everyone, it wasn't just African Americans he was speaking for. He was speaking for everyone to be united, not just African Americans and like white people. Well, I don't know. Yeah. So basically, people think it was just for African Americans, but he was saying everyone as human beings should be treated equally.
He's saying like it doesn't just apply, because obviously you look at like that time, like we were saying, what was going on, segregation, and these things that African Americans weren't being treated equal in this country. Obviously, we know that African Americans, in America, they used to be slaves. And so, everything that comes from that, all the repercussions, all the different things, the Jim Crow laws. Yeah, Brother Ellie?
Yeah, I was gonna add in, Martin Luther King Jr. He had like nonviolent protests, and sometimes they'd be attacked during those protests. But we also can link it back to Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, how he was, even though he was leading these nonviolent protests, people were still acting aggressively towards him. And
Brother Ellie. Yeah. You're using up my material here, Brother Ellie. That was for that was for 20 minutes down the line. So yeah, so that brought up a good point. The connection between Martin Luther King and his teaching, like Brother Milad said, that a lot of things that he taught, a lot of things that he was preaching, it also comes from Islam. Islam also tells us about unity. It tells us to be united. It tells us to treat everyone as equals. It to not look down upon other people. And there's even from the Quran, there's a saying from the Quran, Surah 49, verse 11. It says, "O you who believe, let not a people ridicule another people. Perhaps they may be better than them." And so this is from the Quran telling us that, to not look down upon other people. As at that time, obviously, in America, where they were looking down upon African Americans, that they were sort of, second, third class citizens. They're not along with everyone else. When in reality, Martin Luther King, what he wanted to do was he said, listen, like, this isn't fair. We're all created equal. We should all receive, equal rights. That, I'm not like, how I see it is that like you're not an African American person. There's not a white person, I'm not a brown person, but that we're all created equal by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That whenever there's an injustice, like even, obviously we all saw what happened in, Palestine. You guys saw what happened in Palestine. What was that? A year ago, I think. Palestine and Israel. And one of the big things I saw from that was that it was sort of like a global thing, that everyone saw what was going on in Palestine, the genocide that was going on, that, the way, the injustice that the Israelis were treating the Palestinians. And so it wasn't like, oh, one group of people. It was like everyone. I saw, so many different people came out. There were protests basically across, the world. And obviously, like, we can see this from like social media. We can see how, because like back in like 1960s or something, like, how does it get around? I guess on TV, radio, word of mouth. But nowadays we can sort of see that, like I said about in Palestine, we could, everybody, they were sending around clips and this and that about what was going on over there. And I think that's a huge reason why, everyone felt so strongly about it. They were able to connect with the situation.
I mean, like you said, in Palestine, they're facing inequality, oppression. Basically, what I'm not trying to compare them to like slavery or anything.
Yeah.
But they're going through almost the same thing. They're going through discrimination just because of their ethnicity and their religion. And I feel like there needs to be a civil rights movement for those Palestinians. I feel like they're not getting the same attention because it was in the media for like, I believe, a month straight, and then people just stop reporting about it. That's why I don't like these like news medias that like to feed off money. They get money just for reporting these issues. Once it becomes irrelevant, they just stop reporting on it.
Yeah, exactly. Just whatever is convenient at the time. Like, for example, a lot of people obviously at the time, it was, like I said, it was all over social media. Everybody was looking at it. And then, a couple months later, it's like, is the problem gone? No, it's not gone, but sort of whatever they could gain from that, whatever, political, whatever, leverage they could gain from that, they used it up. And so,
well, I was going to say, brother, you can save that take for your hot take on Saturday. But right now, I was going to say, if we look at it, like, if we just look at the, some people, those strong leaders we've seen in the past, century even. You see Martin Luther King, right?
Yeah.
Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. Malcolm X was actually a Muslim, and Martin Luther King, he wasn't a Muslim. He was a Christian. But
Malcolm X became a Muslim, but yeah.
He became a Muslim because, and the main point what I'm trying to get across here is Malcolm X, when he was, he was part of the what was the Legion of Islam, the what was he something
Nation of Islam.
Nation of Islam, yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
He basically, they were seeing that African Americans were one, and the white man is the devil or something. I forgot, something like that. And to make sure they're separate, and this was an Islamic, kind of teaching. Not, it wasn't an Islamic teaching, but they were teaching that as if like it was part of Islam. But then Malcolm X, when he went for Hajj, he realized that everyone of all colors is over here, and no one was really excluded just because of the way they look or the way that they are. So that's the big difference you see if you just look at Islam and if you look at what people are trying to teach here.
Well, yeah, like the Nation of Islam, right? Basically, as what Brother Ali was saying, the Nation of Islam with like Malcolm X, they were just saying that it was just African Americans, right? And the white people were bad. But they were kind of just like putting themselves in a group, right? But as back to Martin Luther King Jr., he wanted it to be united. Even though he was Christian, of course, he wanted everyone unity, equality. He wanted everyone to be equal. He didn't want himself to be better than others. He just wanted everyone to have the same rights.
Even his, the famous "I Have a Dream" speech. Everybody knows, it's such a famous speech, but even he says, "I have a dream that one day, my children won't be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character." And so you see from that I think like today, why don't you say that? I think today, in a way that people are sort of not judged, but they're sort of labeled or characterized, but I think by the color of their skin. What would you guys say about that?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I guess you could say that, but also I'm thinking more of the context of character. People judge them more by the skin than they do by the character still, and even though people claim to be the other, you might be able to. People still, they won't look at someone just by their skin. It's not just color of the skin either. It's just sometimes there's barriers people are using to hide behind.
Yeah, Brother Milad, what do you think about that?
Well, like when people judge between people's like color of their skin or their characters can mean multiple things: their religion or how they act, or just like if they're disabled. Like I'm not trying to like, I'm not saying it's actually me, but if I went to like the park and I saw someone who seems to be disabled and probably is on a wheelchair, most people would judge him as lower of themselves just because he can't walk.
Yeah.
He's not disabled because he can't walk. It's just that society doesn't fit like stairs and everything. They don't make structures for the disabled, for people that can't walk. They don't make, well, I'm not saying they don't make it, but they don't make a lot of how they
Yeah.
the staircase. They're not actually staircases.
Yeah.
They just elevate up. You don't see a lot of those. So
The ramp, right? Yeah, I think it's the ramp.
So I feel like society needs to stop looking at people as their character, but as themselves and as a person. And another thing I like to bring up is, well, obviously their color of their skin or religion. We see a lot of people going against Islam just because of what the media tells them.
Yeah,
And how, a long time, for like the past 20 years, ever since 9/11, especially in right bias news, we see a lot of hatred towards Islam, and it's kind of hard just because someone's Muslim, people antagonize them, and that's all I have to say. They just antagonize people just because of their race and religion, which is completely wrong. We should never judge people just because of their their persona and their body, religion, race, everything.
Yeah, and even in terms of what with the stuff that with ISIS, it's sort of like it was sort of like around everywhere that people just thought that like all Muslims are like this. When really, if you look at it's such a small.
Yeah.
I don't even. Is it even a percent? Would you even say it's I don't even think it's a percent.
It's a very small percent. It's the same thing as going with African Americans. Just because some, they go out they do drugs, they commit crimes. The media likes to say that black people are thugs, or African Americans are thugs,
Yes.
criminals, and we can't trust them. Same thing is going with Islam right now. The same problem that's been going on for a long time, and it's surprising how stupid, not like how people still believe the media. I see people that still actually believe that all Muslims are terrorists. I'm like, how do you believe that? If there was where's Islam at? 2 billion Muslims or 3 billion?
Yeah, I think like 2 billion, almost 2.5, I think.
I feel like if there's 2 billion terrorists in the world, I don't think that would, you would see a big problem if there's actually 2 billion terrorists at the world. Obviously, it's not all of them. There needs to be like some media control because it's been like propaganda at this point.
I have one more thing to add.
Fun.
Is
Okay.
that Martin Luther King Jr. I mean, like you know how he's like unity of quality, of course. Everyone, you know how like judge based on your skin and not based on your skin by your character. I think that has been completely like changed because like everyone, if one person does something like wrong, then that entire like culture, religion, or like that entire thing is completely demolished. That's their image. Like if one person, African American person, robs a bank, then all African Americans are going to see as robbers. If like they like ISIS and everything, right? How they say like Muslims, right? 9/11. Now all Muslims are presumably bad. That doesn't it complete that doesn't it's not what it means. If one person does something wrong, that one person should be like he should be accountable for his actions, but they put it on every single person that's in that like religion or nation or culture. They completely just put it on them instead of just that one person.
Yeah, and also, like even a couple, what was it, a couple of years ago, I think, something happened in France with, I think there was they had showed some cartoon in class or something about Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And I think some guy, whatever, some student or something, he, what did he do? I think he beheaded the teacher. He did something like that. And so, in France now, then the thinking was like, oh, wow, Muslims are all crazy, they're all must be like this guy, when that's not the case at all. This is just one case. We have to see the good, and we also have to see the bad, in everything that we're given. Unfortunately, like there's a lot of exaggeration going on. I think that people, like you're saying, especially the media, they have such a habit of exaggerating things. Like something could be small. Like even we see like problems. Like I even look at, like the civil rights protests of 2020. People who protested peacefully. They saw some injustice going on and they protested it. They knew that something, bad had happened, some injustice had, gone on, and they were upset with it. And, there's obviously the other people who, the sort of violent protests, that there were people who were involved in, burning down buildings. There were people involved in, looting and all this type of stuff. And like, you look at, was that the majority? Was everybody looting? Was everybody, burning down buildings? And the answer is no, it wasn't like that. So we have to be able to distinguish sort of the good from the bad.
On the subject of, the media and how they manipulate, right? Also, Muawiyah, when he was, during the time before Karbala, he was manipulating, he was using the media and able to kind of not fight the war on the front of who's going to be with Islam and who's going to be without Islam. Because the people who killed Imam Hussain alayhi Islam, they weren't Christians, they were supposedly Muslims. They weren't on the other side, they were part of their own little, their own side. They were fighting themselves, basically. So when they killed Imam Hussain alayhi Islam, Muawiyah was able to, control the media. He used intimidation and, how he was able to basically, let people be afraid of him and, even fight for him against Imam Hussain alayhi salam.
And that's also the only way that Muawiyah was able to fight Imam Ali alayhi salam. Like if we talk about how Muawiyah fought Imam Ali alayhi salam, Imam Ali alayhi salam was such this, great warrior, the lion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How could Muawiyah beat him? The way he beat him was that he used, the dirty politics, basically. He was able to, manipulate Imam Ali alayhi salam's men, obviously they weren't, the strongest, able to manipulate them. And that's how he was able to win. They made it seem like, Imam Ali alayhi salam was on the wrong side somehow. Like imagine having something like that you have, Muawiyah, what he used like the Quran. He said that, oh, let's let the Quran, talk by the Quran, when Imam Ali alayhi salam is the walking, talking Quran. He's a living Quran on this earth. So that's, what you see, how people are able to manipulate it, how they're able to say even, the biggest thing, like a person like Imam Ali alayhi salam, and they believe a character like Muawiyah over Imam Ali alayhi salam. Going to the question, like, we talked about many different examples already, about sort of what Martin Luther King stood for and sort of examples of today. And what kind of impact do you think that, in terms of the impact, like what impact did it have on you? Like what way of how do you think about, the message that Martin Luther King tried to send, and how does it affect you basically?
Well, I was gonna say, Martin Luther King. Basically, what I was thinking was he showed non-violent protests, right? Because in the time, right, no one expected. Even he was being arrested. He got down. He got down. And he was like, he started praying. Martin Luther King showed non-violent. Even people, when they wanted to be violent, when they had strong numbers, they could have, started riots, started doing this and that. He basically was showing the way you win the people, because you can fight wars and you can try to convince people, but he really won a lot of people over by using his nonviolent ways. And the bus boycott, when they boycotted the bus, and basically no one was going on the bus. They were basically the main suppliers of the bus, even if they were paying less. And he knew how to like work around the side. He knew how to work in they weren't violent when they were taking what I was trying to say was not taking over, but kind of switching the people's belief. Maybe we can be united.
Yeah, that's a great point. Brother Hussain, would you like to? Oh, Brother Milad. Yeah.
Oh yeah, so yeah, I think Ali had a great point. Most of the stuff that Martin Luther King Jr. really just portrays and tries to speak his mind through like nonviolent protest is really similar to Islam. Like in Islam, we really can't force our religion upon people. We can't force them. We're supposed to persuade them to find Islam, not to force them. Like I'm not trying to bash Christianity, but a lot of crusaders have forced people to become Christian. So I feel like Martin Luther King Jr. had a really great perspective on how to persuade people going through nonviolent crimes, unlike Malcolm X. Not trying to bash, yeah, again, not trying to bash these people, but Malcolm X seems to be more violent, like we see in the 2020 civil rights movement. A lot of people believe that. Well, not a lot of people really agree with Martin Luther King Jr., but people actually agree with Malcolm X by saying that the only way to change is through violence. They have to take what's theirs, or nothing will happen. Well, that's obviously wrong because we've seen it time and time again that nonviolent protests and nonviolent actions actually work. Like, for example, the civil rights movements. We wouldn't have gone this far without nonviolent protests. Because look, if we were violent back, if they were violent back in the 1960s, what do you think the media would have done? Look, black people are wrong. They're looting. They're rioting. Look, now we're right that black people are less than white people. So that's all I have to say.
Yeah, and there's also a quote from Martin Luther King that says, "In spite of temporary victories, violence never brings permanent peace." And I think that that's a great, add on to what Brother Milad said, was that in terms of, like imagine like where, in terms of the civil rights, imagine where we are today. Imagine if, like you're saying back then, that if they had chose violence. When we see that with Martin Luther King, that's why I think people respect Martin Luther King so much today, is because, the stand that he took, that, okay, we need to have a permanent change. This isn't something that we don't want somebody to, we don't want action in terms of, oh, okay, something happens to somebody and you fix that and then, okay, we're done. Okay, that's all we need. We want to have, everybody, we want everybody to be equal. We want everybody to have equal rights, equal opportunity in terms of, even for voting and all this different stuff. And so that's what I think, even looking at, like you also said about, the Crusades with the Christians, Prophet Muhammad, the way that he preached Islam, of course, there are the people out there, obviously, Western journal, whatever, that people want to say that, oh, Muhammad the Conqueror came and, but at the end of the day, that's the complete opposite of what happened. Prophet Muhammad, he never forced Islam upon anybody. He preached Islam, and that's why a lot of people became Muslims. That's why the Ahlul Bayt was able to, bring people towards Islam. It was through their manners. It was through the way that they acted. They saw the manners of Prophet Muhammad. They saw the manners of Imam Ali, and they thought, okay, if that's their religion, that's how they act. That's how, their religion says that they act. That's how I want to be. And it's basically by example.
Honestly, I think Martin Luther King Jr. obviously, I think what he wanted to do nonviolent protests, because if he did do violent protests, right, then they'd obviously just like jump on him, immediately say whatever he was trying to do was wrong, right? Because one person's actions can change. If you do one thing, it'll change everything. So if you're dealing with something, right, if you're like this type of thing, you have to go about it the right way. Like if you do violent protests, if you like start attacking the police, if you start attacking this, attacking that, right, then you'll go nowhere. But if you do nonviolent, show that you're completely fine, then it'll completely build your case and it'll show that you're innocent. But if you do a violent protest, right, you're saying that you're innocent. You're saying that you're innocent, but it'll completely make you a criminal and it'll completely change everything.
Yeah, and exactly. At the end of the day, it's all about, perception, the way that people see it. And so that's why, we look at it today, even us having this conversation, talking about, Martin Luther King. That's because of the way he acted. That's because he didn't choose to, like imagine, we don't talk about, oh, Martin Luther King, he told everybody to burn down buildings, stuff like, it's not like that. We talk about Martin Luther King, that he aligned with, like Brother Milad said in the beginning, the teachings of Islam, that this is the way that Prophet Muhammad acted himself. This is the way Imam Ali acted. This is how we should act, because we're dealt with these problems all the time. Every single day, there's even some guy, let's just say, in terms of like racism, everybody's, in terms of Muslims, everybody's had that one annoying guy at the park, the guy who calls you a bomber or something like that.
I was going to say that Martin Luther King Jr., he had the numbers to support even like a small army or something, but instead of choosing to be a sword, he was a shield. And basically that's what Martin Luther King kind of stands for. When I think of Martin Luther King, I think of someone who was non-violent, who, he would just walk, I forgot what I was going to say, but I think I was going to say something like, he didn't want to fight. He wanted to be united with other people and come together, basically, instead of, breaking apart and becoming separate little groups. He wanted to become like one whole kind of country, basically. I mean, I know it's not just for this country, it's for all countries, but that's what America was when it was divided.
Yeah, and that's why we talk about all, everything we talked about today. This is really, we talked about, for example, the civil rights movement. We talked about, what Martin Luther King stood for. All this also had a huge part in, the building of America, I guess, as we see it today. These are basically the roots of America. And so, like I said, this is American history. And so that's what we see. I think what we can, all take from it, I guess, is what Martin Luther King, what he stood for. Like, everyone just mentioned, he wanted everybody to be equal, not in their own separate groups, which I think that especially today, we have a lot of people trying to put people in groups, trying to, separate everyone. Like, there's Pakistanis and then there's Indians. And then, there's Asians and then there's Mexicans and then there's, African Americans. And then, there's so many different groups. But I think that what we can all see is that we're all one in terms of we're all human. At the basic level, that's the level we have to take. Or if you want to say we're all Americans, we can say that too. Thank you for everybody participating in our program. Brother Hussain, Brother Milad, Brother Eli. Now, inshallah, we're going to do Allahumma kulli waliyaka for the safety and protection of our 12th Imam. And inshallah, we're all helpers of our 12th Imam. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Allahumma kulli waliyaka al-hujjati
صلواتك عليه وعلى
في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه رحمته وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم صل على محمد. Thank you for everyone who participated in our program. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Khuda Hafiz.